Hey guys, how's it going? So, as you might notice here, first of all, we're back with the Pump Take Sports podcast, and second of all, you might notice that we have a little bit of a different format going on here, and that's because we've decided to make a couple changes to how Pump Take is going to run from now on. So, you're watching the basketball show that is now going to be run primarily by me and Marco, and we're going to also have two other shows. We're going to have an NFL show with Jake and Aiden, and then we're bringing on a new member, Alex Hobson, to run the NHL show with Lucas. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to be releasing an NBA video every Monday. The NFL videos are going to come out every Wednesday, and then we're going to have a hockey video every Friday. So that should be a nice new way to get consistent content out for all the different leagues. So on today's
I'm excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be nice to have like a nice free flowing thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So for today's show, me and Marco we're gonna be talking about the NBA All-Star selections and just sort of some of the fan voting that we've noticed so far, who we think are some big names that deserve to be in there, and maybe some guys that should be in there but aren't being mentioned or given credit as much. So Marco, are there any specific guys that you wanted to start with?
Yeah, for sure. Overall, I just wanted to essentially start with like saying that I like how the MVP voting aligns with the All-Star voting as well. So like my personal, I don't know about you, but my personal top three like candidates for MVP are LeBron, Curry, and Durant, I would say. And those three guys are also at the top of the All-Star voting, which is nice to see. Just like a side thing, I love seeing Curry getting the votes. I'm a huge Curry fan. He's probably my favorite non-Raptor player in the NBA. And yeah, so it's just sick seeing him like have an amazing season. He's having almost as good of a season as I think it was his 2015 MVP season, like very similar stats if you look at it, the unanimous MVP one. So it's dope seeing him get that love that I think he deserves. And like, it's nice to see a player that comes back from an injury and succeeds, similar to Durant as well.
Absolutely. And that really influences, I think, justifiably so the fan voting. And I knew it was like when we picked this topic a couple days ago that Curry was going to be the first guy you were going to talk about, and justifiably so. Like Curry is just having an absolutely incredible season. Obviously, it's like it's even there were people saying Curry's going to win the MVP this year, and he's going to have this MVP season without KD and Clay playing with him. And I, for one, was one of the people that like I doubted. I didn't doubt Curry specifically, but I doubted the team around him being able to succeed. And Curry's like, I recognize that Curry is very good, but I question his ability to be able to elevate a frankly just not very good roster around him. Like that team minus Curry was last place in the NBA last year.
Bro,
so
for real.
But it's really impressive what Curry's been able to do, especially this late in his career, to sort of come back and be able to elevate that roster that was like a 20-win team last year to being a like close to 500 team. It's really impressive.
Yeah, Curry's a guy that has always been slept on. So I think that is something that, lights a fire under his ass, where he's just like, he's ready to go. Like people are just always, even though they've been so good, it's kind of like, it's obviously not like Brady, but it's a similar kind of thing where it's like, oh, he's getting old, or he's on a new team. Maybe whatever the scenario is, it's like people just like to doubt someone like that, or like a team like that they've just been winning. And it's like,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's super cool to see him do that. And it just speaks to how great of a leader he is. Like, as you said, they're kind of a bum team, but they're over 500 right now and like 40 wins, please.
Yeah. And like, 40 wins for our event. It's just still looking a little bit questionable. But,
it is looking questionable. It's doable, but it's questionable.
It's doable. But yeah, absolutely. It's almost a case with guys like Curry and like you mentioned Brady, and we even see it with LeBron. It's like when they've just been successful for so long, people try to anticipate the fall off of them.
Yeah, because it's gonna happen eventually. Yeah. So it's like people are just trying to predict. I saw this total side note, but I saw this Max Kellerman thing. He was talking about, it was like this clip of him talking about Brady, and the clip was from like 5 or 6 years ago, like next year Brady's going to be trash. He's going to fall off. He's done. And since then he's won, I think 3. I think it was before his 4th Super Bowl or something like that. But it's crazy to see like people doubting and then people proving it wrong. I just like it. I like that narrative. Any specific players for you that you wanted to point out?
Just sticking with the guard theme in the West, I've been noticing that LeBron is getting votes as that second guard, and we just mentioned that Curry undoubtedly he is having a starting all-star season, and so is LeBron James. But you have those two guys as the guards in the West. Where does that leave guys like Luka and like Dame as guards in the West, and Donovan Mitchell, who's also just having an incredible season? So who do you think that if we're picking Steph as the one guard in the West, or he might not even be the one guard in the West is the point that I'm kind of trying to make. It's like that Western Conference is very very deep with guys who are being listed as guards, even if LeBron and Luka are like kind of like every single position on the floor, but they're listed as guards for the sake of the All-Star voting. So who do you think is going to get, at the end of the day, get those 2 spots?
Yeah, I honestly didn't know that LeBron was listed as a guard for the All-Star voting, but I think that's kind of some cheese. Just like throw him as a forward, Like I know he's playing guard, but it's weird because it's positionless basketball now. It's not like like he can literally play any 5 position. Maybe not center, but like he could play center. But yeah, like I think Steph Curry should be a lock for one of the guards. And if LeBron is listed as a guard as well, I think those are the 2 guards in the Western Conference. And I think to fill up the rest of the roster, like for me personally, I think Jokic has been the best center in the league this year. So I think he should be a lock at center for sure. It's crazy because that league is like, that conference is so stacked with players like Anthony Davis not even getting the a starting spot on the roster possibly. Because I think guys like Luka Doncic and also possibly Kawhi Leonard could sneak in at the spots for the top 5 as well. I don't know about Luka, I guess, because he's listed as a guard as well.
Luka could probably also be listed as forward, but personally, my starting 5 in the West this year is Curry, just because of the reasons that we mentioned, that he's really just elevating that team. LeBron, because he's LeBron and he's great, and he should just be like until he retires. Until he retires, he's a lock, and he's probably just going to be a starter every year. Yeah. Kawhi, AD, and Nikola Jokic. Jokic is another guy that is like, he's just balling. And it's almost unfortunate that the Nuggets have seemed to like they've started to regress around him as a team. But it's unfortunate that sort of fall back down to earth with like what we saw last year in the bubble with guys like Jamal Murray, and then like I've heard just in the Nuggets online communities, like Will Barton hasn't been awesome this year. Paul Millsap is really starting to show his age a lot. Michael Porter Jr. hasn't really met expectations yet. So it's unfortunate for the Nuggets that all of those things that needed to go right for them to be a contender didn't go right. And those events have aligned with Jokic just playing the best basketball of his career.
It's so cool seeing a dude that's just like seemingly unathletic, seemingly not a basketball player, be so good at basketball. And it's for all the right reasons too. Like, you can look at a guy like Zion or like Pascal or like whoever, just like these athletic freaks where it's like, that they're going to be a baller. And the reason they're going to be a baller is because they can jump high, they can rebound. They're going to body people. They're going to do whatever. But then there's this oaf of a dude, just like this kind of chubby looking guy. Like, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of him from when he was a kid. They're hilarious.
Yeah, I've seen them.
They're just so funny. He just looks like that fat kid in class that ate too many donuts and was like bullied. But he's literally one of the best players in the NBA. Yeah,
he's the best big man in the NBA. It's not even really like a discussion. But
and it's crazy because he just has everything in his bag. So I love him. I love him. He's a great player.
The Nuggets and like that core of just like Jokic and Jamal Murray, that's an example to me of just how you build the team the right way in this NBA.
Mhm.
Like, you need to just start by drafting that star guy, which they did with Jokic, and then they're doing their very best to just surround him with the talent that sort of suits his skill set, in a sense that Jokic is like, he's not the most like athletic guy, but he's very good at spacing the floor and shooting the ball. So you're kind of surrounding him with those perimeter threats who can move really well off the ball, and letting Jokic be the sort of primary ball handler.
Mhm.
And
For real.
I really like the way that the Nuggets have built their team, and it's sort of just, it's unfortunate that it seems like they might not be able to get over the hump by doing that.
Yeah, this is definitely a little bit of a side topic from
Yeah.
our initial, all-star topic, but I think it is very interesting because I remember after watching those games in the playoffs with the Nuggets and the Jazz and the Clippers, and just seeing how well Jamal Murray was playing and how well that team was working. I mean, obviously a team's going to work well when a player is dropping 40 points from you and is just literally shooting lights out. But I remember having a talk with Lucas about, because he's a huge Jamal Murray fan, Kitchener boy, just about how the Nuggets were going to work the next year. Were the coaches going to hand Jamal the reins more and let him do his thing? Because if a player is able to do that efficiently, why not do it efficiently? It opens the floor from other people. It just, of course, if a player can score 40 efficiently, you let him score 40. But it just hasn't happened this year. And like Jamal Murray, I have not seen highlights of him pretty much all year. Like, it's pretty clear that he isn't an all-star and that he's just kind of regressed back to his mean of last year. But I don't know. So maybe he's just a playoff player, but that's good. I mean,
it's good. And it's like, it almost like was with how hot he was in the bubble. It almost wasn't reasonable that I feel like a lot of people, like, there was a big Jamal Murray like hype train going into this season.
For real.
And I don't think that the fact that he hasn't met just that unreal level of play again, like the guy was averaging, like, he made a jump from averaging like 17 or 18 points in the regular season. He averaged 26 points per game in the bubble. In the playoffs.
It's crazy.
So it's like, seeing that sort of jump in just like scoring ability, it's almost just unprecedented to see in such a short period of time. And there were big questions whether Jamal Murray is going to be that hot again. And I think for the Nuggets, it was like getting in that deep playoff run like they did last year, and in such a unique environment in the bubble as well. That was their big shot that they had. And now, like, I hope for them that this MVP level Jokic we're seeing can maintain over a couple more years, and that they can sort of find that perfect storm, like another team that we were going to talk about later, the Utah Jazz, are seeing right now. And just because that's what teams like that need to make their run, when they don't have that sort of like super team build where any guy can take over the game. You need everyone that has been constructed in that roster to play to their best of their ability for an entire season and an entire playoffs. And it's hard to do.
It's really hard, man. And I think in the playoffs, just in general, it's like, that's why people bet on teams with those star talents. Like, let's just say the Lakers finish third or fourth. Let's just say people are still going to have them as the favorites because they have LeBron and AD, and that's it. And it makes sense because pretty much every year it's the team with the best players, like the best all-stars, that make it deep in the playoffs. So even though right now the Jazz are like just snapping and playing so great, and we'll talk about Donovan Mitchell and Gobert in a sec, just in regards to all-star voting, it's just like Kale, would you take the Jazz over the Lakers? No, I wouldn't. No, like, obviously not.
It's just like, they're different kinds of beasts in the NBA, and it's like the Jazz are like, they've built an incredible team around Donovan Mitchell, and I love what they're trying to do, and honestly, I think in a scenario where like somehow the Western Conference Finals are Jazz versus Lakers, for the good of the NBA, it would be hard for me to not root for the Jazz to make it. But in a 7-game series, you're taking LeBron and AD.
Yeah, every single time. I agree. Yeah. All right. Any more? I guess since we talked about the Jazz a little bit, you want to mention
Yeah, we can go right into our
Donovan Mitchell and
into our all-star reserves.
yeah.
So
You can go, man. Go ahead.
I kind of want to list Luka as a forward just for the sake of all-star reserves. Is that actually no, never mind. I don't have to. I can go into the wild card.
Yeah.
So my all-star reserves for the Western Conference are guard 1, Damian Lillard, guard 2, Luka Doncic, forward 1, Brandon Ingram, forward 2 is Rudy Gobert, front court 3 is Zion Williamson, and then my 2 wild cards are Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker. And Donovan Mitchell, we can talk about the other guys in a second. He is just having such an incredible season for the Jazz, and you mentioned a good point to me before we came on here that the All-Star fan voting, it does sort of actually no, the second round of voting is out for the Western Conference.
Oh.
And Donovan Mitchell is like he's in the same range as like Ja Morant this year for fan voting.
I see that.
So do you want to go into the point that you were talking about earlier? Because it was a really interesting like idea of how this is sort of decided.
Yeah. So essentially what I was saying before we recorded is that it's pretty clear to see by the amount or ratio of votes people are getting. It's very based off of social media and based off of hype. So teams like the LA teams or like I guess big market teams and also teams and players that are getting a lot of hype in the media, they just tend to get more votes, which makes sense. But it's a year in and year out. It's the amount of wins a team has also playing into how good a player is and how amazing their stats are. So like last year, there was a big narrative around Bradley Beal not making. He didn't make the All-Star game at all, right? Or he just didn't make the starters? No, I think he didn't make it at all.
He didn't make it at all.
Exactly.
I think Middleton was a reserve over him.
Yeah, Middleton was a reserve over Bradley Beal. Exactly. Yeah. So last year there was a narrative around him not making the All-Star game. And this year, the voting is so clear that he is having a better season this year than last year, but not by much. And Washington are dead last. Dead last. Literally the worst team. Arguably the worst team in the league.
But he's leading guard voting in the Eastern Conference.
And exactly. He's leading guard voting in the Eastern Conference. He's leading the league in points. He's averaging like 33 points a game. Mm-hmm. But it's like last year he was almost doing that. I think he was averaging 29 points or 30 points. It was the most points a player had ever averaged not making the All-Star game.
Yeah. And it was very similar.
Very similar.
To stat line this year.
That's what I mean. It's all about narratives because it's like people want to vote for that like comeback story. But like Bradley Beal he was still around last year and he was pretty much doing the same thing. And they're just as bad, if not worse this year Westbrook's been out, but like you could argue they have a better team this year. And they're just as bad. So I don't know if I actually have like a point or like a stand on this. I don't think it's an issue. It's just interesting to see how narrative plays into things, I guess.
Yes, it does. And just going back to the Donovan Mitchell point is that a lot of the time it's the All-Star game is portrayed that wins matter a lot, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was the entire argument for the Middleton and Bradley Beal thing.
Yeah.
When you look at Donovan Mitchell, and he's clearly just the leader on a Jazz team that they've won 18 out of their last 19 games at the time that this is being recorded. Like they're just on like an unbelievable tear through the Western Conference. Is there not an argument to be made then if winning is so important? And like I don't necessarily agree with what I'm about to say, but is there not an argument for Donovan Mitchell to be a starting All-Star if winning matters that much?
Dude, and that's I think something that NBA fans in general and sports fans in general, they vary on ideals a lot. So I've had this conversation with Drake. I don't actually know Drake. I just call Jake Drake sometimes when I mess up the name. But I've had this conversation with Jake and you and just other sports fans in general of like, how much does winning actually matter? So like Bradley Beal is a good example of this.
But how much does it matter for, this is an important differentiation to make. How much does it matter for voting in somebody for an individual accolade?
Yes, and that's exactly what I was going to get to. It's like last year me and Jake were having the conversation of how good is Trae Young, because I'm a Trae Young believer. Jake's not really a Trae Young believer as much. He's come around on Trae a little bit and whatever. That's not the point. Essentially, we were saying that we both agreed that the Hawks are a poo-poo team, and that Trae Young, I was saying that it's not Trae Young's fault, pretty much. It's not all of his fault. And Jake was, they're not winning. Trae Young is the leader. It rests on Trae Young's shoulder. And the player that I actually brought up was Bradley Beal. I was like, Bradley Beal is in the same scenario, though. Why don't we, like, Jake, why don't you criticize Bradley Beal as much? And me and him had a super productive conversation. It was like a 2-hour-long conversation just about guys like Trae Young, Bradley Beal. We talked about rosters and all this stuff. But honestly, when it comes to the All-Star game, in my personal opinion, I think winning should play less of a role than individual accolades, because I think individual accolades, or I'll take this stance. This is my stance, but I will also take it for the sake of the podcast. I want to have a strong stance on the podcast. I think that individual accolades are much more important than winning, because I think the All-Star game, that's what it's about. You want to see the best players in the league play. And I think if you don't have Bradley Beal there, I think you're missing out. And I know that he will be there, but last year we were missing out.
I agree with that sentiment for the All-Star game. But you said, can you clarify what you mean when you say individual accolades are more important than winning? You mean like
for voting?
For voting.
For the All-Star
game. You mean
yeah.
like individual performance in a game and statistics are more important than winning, not accolades.
Well, for All-Star voting, sorry. I'll clarify I'll clarify what I said. So for All-Star voting, individual accolades are more important than winning.
Okay.
If we're talking about greatness, like GOAT conversation, is Bradley Beal a top 100 player of all time? No, because he's never won.
So I was confused at the point you were trying to get. Yes, I agree, especially for an All-Star game, that the entire point of it is for it to be entertaining for fans. And to reward the guys who are like performing extremely well individually in a season. And I just think for both of those purposes, you want to just have the best individual basketball players composing a team that you can.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's pretty clear that like the fans, that they vote based on, they're not like going deep into like, PR and shit like that. They're just kind of looking at stats, seeing what they see on Instagram, and just voting their favorite players. Like you got guys like Klay Thompson getting more votes than CJ McCollum. Like, and Klay Thompson hasn't. It's just a meme.
But at the same time, you do need to have a balance. Like So like I encourage, you can't just base it all on just like who's like fun and entertaining to have at the All-Star game just for the sake of fans. Like I put Rudy Gobert in one of my one of my reserve backcourt spots. Yeah. And that's just because like winning does play a factor into it. But it can't be the dominating like influence on who makes the All-Star game.
Gobert is a pretty polarizing player too, and it's a good example to bring up in the conversation. It's because he doesn't put up like crazy highlights, crazy stats. Obviously, he's like a great defender. He gets a lot of blocks, rebounds, but like he is so important to that Jazz team. It's crazy. Like so important. They would be nothing without him. And I think that speaks for something. It's like the same thing that we say with like why we love Raptors fans love Lowry so much. It's just because he's a dog, and he just puts up those like invisible stats that you don't see on the stat sheet that are so important to winning, right? So I think that still plays a part, but obviously, the votes in the conferences are the votes in All-Stars are driven by this like media hype and stuff like that, which is fine. You want to do East?
Yeah, for the sake of time, let's move on to the East.
I'm down.
So for my starting my Eastern Conference starters, guard 1, I have James Harden. Guard 2, I have Bradley Beal. Front court 1, Kevin Durant. Front court 2, Giannis. And then front court 3, I have Joel Embiid.
Yeah, and I think I'm I'm 100% in
agreement with that.
Agreement with you. Yeah, I think that's pretty clear. I think Joel's like an MVP candidate this year. He's
Joel should honestly be like an MVP front runner this year. Like,
yeah, he is balling
with and that is the MVP is something that you have to consider winning it. Like, that's something where winning it becomes more like more.
Oh yeah. I know
a prolific influence, and like,
yeah, Bradley Beal can't even be in the MVP conversation.
Exactly. Yeah,
because MVP, it takes into account like quote unquote greatness.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So like,
exactly,
you can't vote Bradley Beal, and yes, he is averaging an insane amount of points, but yes, he is losing every single game as well. And it's not really his fault; it's like the team's fault. But whatever, it's not.
Yeah, and like,
it is what it is.
Joel Embiid has been absolutely just like.
The Sixers are the best team in the conference right now.
They're the best team in the conference, and that's like in a team with like in a conference with like the Bucks and the Nets and like even the Celtics. And at the end of last year, everybody was like shitting on the Sixers. There was they were getting clowned so heavily. And like, I don't like the Sixers, but people were saying like
trade Simmons, trade Embiid, blow the team up.
Yeah.
So
it's very telling for Embiid to come in and just kind of like, frankly, he's having the best season of his career, and the Sixers, and to sort of lead the Sixers to being the top team in the conference. And it's great to see that Embiid has been able to just kind of stay healthy this year. And I think that's a big part of it as well, in that the Sixers, like, they've never truly reached their full potential of what they can do with that sort of like the process duo of Simmons and Embiid, because Embiid is just fucking hurt all the time. So like,
facts. I know I used to be a huge fan of Embiid, and I still am a fan of his play style. Like, it's awesome seeing that like classic, facing up to the basket, awesome post moves. Like he just looks like a player from like the 80s, like a center from the 80s, and he's so dominant. I love it. It's just really fun to watch. But yeah, so totally, I agree with your starting 5. Who would you pick from the 7 reserves?
From the 7 reserves.
Or
I think like my first reserve guard would probably be. You're putting me in a tough spot here, because it's like the Raptors fan in me wants to just name.
I know.
name Raptors for the reserves, but
it's the first time in a while that like we haven't had like a clear lock in. Like, Siakam was a starter last year.
Like we might not have an
all-star at all.
Have an all-star at all this year.
Like, I'm looking right now, Van Vliet has less votes than Derrick Rose, Sexton, and Westbrook.
Well, even in terms of like, not even just in fan voting, because at the end of the day, the NBA has the final.
Yes, they do have the final verdict. That's true.
I think out of anyone on our team, like Lowry and Siakam definitely have the best chance. But in terms of guards, it's like I'm looking at it now, and it's hard to put a guy like Van Vliet in as a reserve. And it's like, normally he's having a statistical season that the argument is definitely there that he can be a reserve. But you have guys like Kyrie, and like Jaylen Brown has taken a massive step up here.
Huge step.
And then you still have guys like Trae Young, who just because of just essence of being
Trae
Young, that he's probably just going to get put in as a reserve anyways. And it's hard to fit in guys like Van Vliet in there.
Yeah, I think for me, I think my 2 bench guards would probably be Jaylen Brown, and man, it's tough, honestly. I hate Kyrie.
But bro, like Kyrie, it's like he has to be a.
I know he does have to be. I think it would be, for me, just my 2 would be Kyrie Irving and probably Zach LaVine as my two bench main reserves. And then my two forwards would probably be Jason Tatum and I don't even know, man. Jason Tatum and Sabonis.
Mm-hmm.
Those would be my two. And then for my two like wild card guys, it would probably be Bam and maybe Trey or Jaylen Brown. Yeah.
Trey or Jaylen Brown. Yeah, that's fair enough. I agree with that. Maybe
putting Zach LaVine in is a hot take, but he's having a fucking incredible season.
I think you have to put Zach LaVine.
I think so too.
The Bulls aren't winning, but the guy is just like he's averaging like what's he averaging? Like I don't know.
I don't 25 or 26 points a game. I can check.
It might even be higher than that. It might even be like 27. I don't have the exact stat just sitting in front of me, but Zach LaVine has just been like he's been insane for the Bulls this year. And
28 points a game, same as Giannis, same as Luka.
Yeah,
he's snapping more than Kawhi, more than Jokic, more than Tatum, more than Brown, more than Trey, more than LeBron. He's snapping.
Yeah, there's the Eastern Conference has really taken some steps. Because like previously, like it would just be a shoe, and Lowry would just be like if he's not
top voted guard in the conference.
It wouldn't even be a question if Kyle Lowry is a reserve. But the Eastern Conference is becoming filled up with guys that they almost just put up just such insane stats because the conference is getting so much better that it forces you to take out the guys that have that like intangible impact on winning.
Yeah, I know.
That's the other side of the discussion we were having earlier about like the merits of team success versus just individual stats and getting voted into this game is that the NBA is just progressing to such a point that there's so many talented guys, both guards and forwards, that just put up insane numbers on just an extremely like fast pace and high volume offenses that if you base it on statistics alone, it kind of takes away a lot of recognition from guys who do have a very big impact on winning, even if their stats aren't
like Gobert, like Lowry,
as popping off the page at you. Yeah, like Gobert, like Lowry, or even like Bam. Bam is another great example in that he is one of them. And man, like Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy that he can't like Jimmy Butler, in my opinion, is easily a top 20 player in the NBA.
Yeah, he's just a winner. Like
he's a winner. He has that intangible like X factor or whatever he has, you know.
He has this like leadership essence about him, but at the same time, it's like if guys like Sabonis are putting up like
or LaVine
or upwards of 20 points a game, it's like how do you include Jimmy Butler or like you can't put Jimmy Butler over Jason Tatum because it's like
no. It's rough too because Jimmy Butler's been injured for a while, and another guy that I just wanted to. There's a couple guys that I feel like we should shout out. CJ McCollum, I feel like deserves a shout. Obviously, hey CJ, if you're watching this, you were snapping before you were injured, bro. Like obviously they're not going to watch it, but I feel like
good job, CJ McCollum.
He was snapping, but I feel like they deserve to be acknowledged. So CJ, I think De'Aaron Fox really deserves to be acknowledged. He's having a fucking fantastic season as well.
And this is
any more guys? Or?
This is for when Jake watches to the end of this video. Jake has been very high on Julius Randle this year, and I think like just because of the reasons that we were just mentioning, there's just, and I was arguing about this in the chat with Shanti too, that there are guys that deserve to be in this conversation that just by essence of that they're not those top guys in the conference. They get pushed out, but that doesn't mean that they don't deserve credit for what they're doing. And Julius Randle is one of those guys.
Yeah.
For one, when they gave Julius Randle that max contract, I was just like, this is just the Knicks being the Knicks. And
I thought the same thing.
They're just really just kind of like not moving in any direction with this. But I really like what they're doing this year. They have a nice sort of youth movement going, and Julius Randle is doing an excellent job as being sort of I don't know why I even think of Julius Randle in this way also, because he's not like an old veteran guy. He's pretty young.
I think of him as being like Paul Millsap old. I don't know why.
Yeah,
In my brain.
maybe he just looks old, but I think of him like
Yeah.
that. But he's not. It was a great sign. Julius Randle's like 24, so you have him maxed up into his prime,
Into his
and like,
prime, facts.
and then the Knicks are like they're low key winning some games.
Dude, the Knicks are 7. I have the comments
Yeah.
up right now. The Knicks are 7th in the East. They still have a losing record. They're 13-15, but they're pretty much the same as the Raptors. They're above the Heat. They're above the Hawks. They're on pace with the Hornets. They're playing great.
Yeah, and anytime I've watched them as well, like they're competitive in every game that they're playing.
Yeah, like they're not a joke anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice for Knicks fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knicks fans, you have, for the first time in a while, for the first time since Carmelo, you have something to be excited about here.
Yeah, I rate that like Julius Randle, who's a seemingly, at least in my view of like the NBA, who's a seemingly kind of low key, not necessarily a role player, but just like a good player, is like their star who's just snapping. And Knicks fans are like, this guy deserves to be an all-star. He's getting snubbed. And I just rate that. Like, I rate that they have something to be like passionate about, you know?
Yeah, but the thing is, it's like there's a lot of guys that for that third like reserve front court spot that you could argue deserve it. Like Siakam, Julius Randle should be in that conversation. Jimmy Butler should be in Middleton should be in that conversation as well. It's like there's so much just depth at that spot that it's hard to say definitively who's going to be there. In fact, like the only guy that I can even say for sure is going to be in the front court all-stars outside of the top 3 that we talked about is Jason Tatum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I because the Celtics are great this year too. So I think it's a pretty easy player to put in there for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have anything else that we want to touch on, or
This is the last thing, and then we'll, for the sake of time, we'll wrap this video up. But just in terms of the merit of the whole All-Star game, do you think that this should even be happening?
I know. Yeah, I'm surprised that we're bringing this up this late. Dude, honestly, I don't know. I don't. I haven't thought about it that much, to be honest. So I don't think I have a strong opinion on it. But I think things like the Durant incident, playing against the Raptors, like shit like that, just kind of I don't know. I feel like the NBA can handle it better. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like if we're pulling guys out of, like, I don't have a problem with the All-Star game, but there needs to be some consistency with how the rest of this season has been handled. It's like when we're in a situation where guys like Jimmy Butler are missing 2 weeks because of COVID protocols and like literally just like tanking their team's position in the standings because of it. And then you're pulling guys out in the middle of games after they've already been on the floor for like 15 minutes and then having them sit on the sideline. It's like why are we doing an All-Star game then?
Yeah,
I feel as a fan of the NBA, as a massive fan of the NBA, I would enjoy to see an All-Star game. Like, it's an entertaining thing, and I watch it every year just because I like the league. But at a certain point, you need to just like take the validity of the regular season a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
And I feel for like the legitimacy of this season and just having it run smoothly, especially with like teams like the Wizards and teams like the Timberwolves and the Grizzlies they're gonna have to have games pushed back to the second half of the season because of this COVID protocols, and they've missed like a week or 2 of their schedule.
Yeah, facts.
So I feel like the season, rather than having an All-Star game where some guys can go and possibly like again end up because of health and safety protocols, that we'd be better off just having a 2-week hiatus in the middle of the season where teams can completely clear protocols, get healthy, have the second half of the season, and then maybe even do it again before playoffs, and just kind of use these breaks as sort of a reset button. And not, I feel like the All-Star game is like, wow, it will be fun. It's pushing the agenda of what this season can possibly be.
Yeah, I think you hit all the points. I think the last thing because I don't want to repeat all the stuff that you said, I think the last point is the All-Star game is like last year. The All-Star game was so much fun. Great That was my favorite All-Star game I've ever watched.
Mhm.
It was awesome just because the players were so passionate because they had this new format. They got to pick their teams. And yeah, and I liked how they did the quarters things and the halves things. It was cool.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was awesome. But this year, if there's players like, okay, if you have the face of the league, LeBron James, speaking out and saying, I don't think the All-Star game is a good idea, or I don't want to do it. Like, as a fan, I feel empathetic for LeBron. Obviously, like, it's not like the end of the world if it happens, but like, if LeBron and other players share the same feelings towards the All-Star game as LeBron does, as a fan, I'm kind of like, you know what? If players don't want to do it, then they shouldn't have to do it. Because at the end of the day, the All-Star game is to celebrate players' accolades. And if they don't want to, like,
if they don't feel safe doing it as well.
Yeah, it's like, just don't do it. Because I don't know, like, as a fan, I want to see players having fun and they're passionate and they're happy to be there. Like, the All-Star game's lit because, like, you see all the players on the sideline, like, joking around, like, nudging each other, taking videos, shit like that. Like,
yeah, but
that's
now
not gonna happen.
It's like there's gonna be this bad stench around the game this year when it happens, or it's like guys are like worried about like being exposed to members of like other teams, and then potentially bringing it back to their own team, and then
it's crazy.
It's just like
it'll be like 20 cities, 20 players from different cities all coming together.
It's just
yeah.
I don't think it's a very good idea. And
I agree.
Yeah, so that was a good All-Star talk, and I think with that we should wrap her up. So thank you everybody for watching. If you're still watching this late into the show, we'll be me and Marco will be making one of these shows about the NBA every Wednesday. Just we'll be trying to cover some major news that happens, as we know so frequently does throughout the NBA, and just sort of covering some marquee games and just themes throughout the season. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Adios.